Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Tanya Jackson. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Montrose Air Quality Services and the moderator for this room today. Our next presentation is going to be by Jared Metcalf on the update for Appendix K. Jared Metcalf has over 20 years of oil and gas industry experience. He currently heads our U.S. division for OGI as Vice President. With a Bachelor's in Science in Industrial Technology and Instrumentation, Jared provides logistical and operational support to Montrose's USA OGI crews. He is our lead contact for interacting with clients in both office and field settings. Jared's extensive experience in providing professional fugitive emissions monitoring services across North America and internationally has given him the expertise to help our clients meet their compliance voluntary requirements. Jared specializes in the design, setup, and implementation of LDAR programs using optical gas imaging. If everyone could please give him a good welcome.
Thanks, Jared. Good morning, everyone. So, talk about Appendix K and how to prepare for it. That's me. You get to see my headshot. So we're going to talk about today is just how do I prepare for it? What's coming? What do I need to do? And in my opinion, everybody needs to start now. If you feel like you're going to be subject to it at your facilities, because it takes some time to get everything set up and in order to be able to follow Appendix K. So we're going to, what is Appendix K? Why is it here? We're going to talk about senior OGI camera operator, which is kind of the biggest portion of this. We're going to kind of talk about scan times based on components. What can a technician scan? What you need to do for the survey, and then how to QA, QC everything. Can everybody hear me all right, by the way? All right, so let's get started. So Appendix K. So this is, determines how you use the optical gas imaging camera to find leaks. But what it's done that's great that I like is it's put into place a required training that wasn't there before. That way everybody is up to speed, knows how to use the camera, knows what they're looking for. It specifies what tools you can use, and how to use them. So right now, as Appendix K is written, it is only applicable if it's written into a subpart. That means the regulation has to call it out right now. So it's not across the board. It has to be written into the regulation and referenced as you need to use Appendix K. Right now, the only thing out there that everybody's aware of is Quad OB. So why is it here? Well, it's here because it's put some structure into place because they thought everybody running around with cameras were just a bunch of cowboys, which is partially true. There was no required training. Anybody could just pick up a camera and go and scan a facility. The quality and the level of work varied vastly depending on the technician and their level of training. So this is really good, right? It's taking and setting boundaries for what you can and cannot do. I've seen technicians go in and scan a facility and it takes them an hour and they find one leak. And then another more qualified technician goes in, spends 10 hours there and finds 50 leaks. So there was that big of a difference. Appendix K was needed. It definitely was. So again, why is it here? There's been studies that are done and they reference this in Appendix K. We had a team that was a part of this study that was held at METEC. And so if you're not familiar with it, METEC is a facility that does controlled releases of gas. So they set it up, they create leaks, they send the teams out there to go find them. They were doing time studies and seeing, who could find what. There's usually about, I think, 4 teams at a time running around the facility. And this really gauged, how effective optical gas imaging is. And they found that it can be very effective. But the biggest thing that they found was experience and training. which is again required by Appendix K. So that was the number one thing that was pointed out here, which is why Appendix K is here, was experience and training. So here's some of the results. And one of the other things they found, they said that speed played a part. So the longer time you spent surveying, the more leaks were found by a technician. I questioned whether, whether it was, do we require more time on tools? Or was it just the fact that the technician was experienced and due to his techniques and his training, he spent more time on tools? As you can see, they had 3 different kind of groups that they put people in. LDAR high being a high level of training and experience. LDAR low, meaning, not very experienced, kind of new to it. And then compliance, which compliance is the environmental guy that's got a $100,000 camera sitting in his office that he takes out every now and again. It's real. That's what happens. And so the results you can see are vastly different compared to the level of experience that they have. But also you can see when you're, the least experienced groups, the time on tools mattered a lot more than it did for the experienced guy. And me reading the results, I would say that it's less of a factor if you have proper training. So that training is the key thing to provide success. And they even said, I quoted this, recommended speed should potentially be conditioned on surveyor's experience, which I wish they would have done with Appendix K, but they didn't. But we'll have to live with that. So if you take away anything today, take this away. You're going to have senior OGI camera operators have a successful program. It's the base of it. You cannot make new technicians without a senior OGI camera operator. And to be a senior OGI camera operator, you have to have 1,400 hours over your career right now of experience to be one. And that equates to, 175 8-hour days. So keep that in mind as you're preparing for this and calculate the days until Appendix K comes out. That gap is getting smaller and smaller. So if you're not prepared, this is the first thing you need to start doing. Get a camera in somebody's hands, get them scanning. It doesn't even have to be compliance driven. It's just time on tools is what they outline. So get them out there, get them with the camera and have them scan whatever, voluntary, whatever they need to do. Another thing is that they have to have 40 hours in the last 12 months after Appendix K goes into effect. So that can be auditing other technicians, it can be looking at data. You're just going to have to calculate that time and make sure that at least in the last 12 months, they've got 40 hours of experience.
And that's they maintain their senior
Status.
Yes. With that.
Yeah, it could be, they could have done the 1,400 hours 3 years ago, but within 12 months before Appendix K comes out, they got to have an additional, they have to have an additional 40 hours. So, and like I said at the bottom, it can be training, auditing, or other similar tasks can be considered towards experience. So make sure you have your senior level techs because they make new OGI techs. So let's talk about what can a technician do? So right now Appendix K says that you have to have a 2-second dwell time per component. I don't like it. I don't think a lot of industry likes that, but it is what it is. It got better from the first release. The first release said that it was 5-second dwell time. In my opinion, what we followed is 3 seconds per scene because it's really irrelevant to how many components are in a scene, but this is what we have to follow. And following this, you also have to have multiple angles. So 2 seconds per component. You got 5 components there. That's 10 seconds of dwell time. And then you got to shift to a different angle. So additional 2 seconds per component. I say it averages out to about 5 seconds per component due to the shift to get to the new angle. That's kind of what I've done my calculations on. Also, you have to consider that there's a 5-minute break for every 30 minutes of scan time. And it's not real clear. They say in the language that that can be, you could do other tasks, things like that. And I believe most of the time technicians, when you're moving from one scene to the next, you're pulling the camera down. To me, that's a break from visualizing OGI. Writing up leaks, things like that. But you have to be careful because it prescribes 5 minutes for every 30 minutes of scan time. And with that puts you under 7 hours of actual scan time in an 8-hour day if you run the numbers. So you're gonna have to make sure you follow that. It's documented. I say document everything. It doesn't require it, but if there's ever an audit and a question, you need to be keeping track of that. The breaks, making sure they're there.
Jerry, I have a question.
Does that say 5-minute continuous?
It does not, which is why I said you're going to have to interpret that yourself. I'm not going to do that for you. Could it be, every time you put the camera down and move to a different scene or move to a different unit or whatever it might be? Maybe, right? And I have to really play, it's a gray area. I think their intent was, every 30 minutes, you got to set the camera down, sit down, take a break. But the way it's written, it could be interpreted as those small breaks from the camera and viewing it could count for that.
Because their intent is that you're not continuously looking for.
Right.
That's their intent.
And I don't know who has experience in the room, but I do. And I've never heard it from any of my technicians saying, God, I need a break. Because you're not, it's like they read it as though it was written as though you've got a camera strapped to your face and you're constantly looking through the eyes of infrared, but that's just not what reality is. But when you break it down, taking away the potential breaks, you're down to, less than 5,000 components at the end of the day. Which, you can at like a gas plant do around 10,000 with today's standards. Because everything's so compact, but this is going to limit you because you've got to count for every component. Any questions on that? So an average cryo unit, roughly 10,000 components, which means that one technician can do a cryo unit in about 2 days with the existing Appendix K standards. So that's 19 to 22 work days in a month. So one technician can do about 10 cryos in a month. So that's following Quad OB, which is the only thing that is, well, I say the only thing, it's the one thing that everybody in this room knows that's referencing Appendix K at the moment. It's bi-monthly scans of everything. So that you're going to need, for every 20 cryos, you're going to need a technician, which is why it's important to get your senior level techs there and ready to create additional OGI technicians. Does this make sense to everybody? And again, it depends on the pace. It could be less, but a highly skilled guy, 20 cryos a year is kind of what you need to be prepped for. If this moves into compressor stations, right now we're doing the average compressor station in a day. It's probably going to move to 2 days for a compressor station if they have to follow Appendix K. Because I say 5 seconds per component with the prescribed 2 seconds of dwell time and then moving, but it might be more. You got to think about the technician. He's going to have to look at a scene, count those components and make sure his dwell time is good. so that he's not out of compliance. So that's important to remember as well. So with Quad OB, there's no more method 21. A facility of this size.
Actually, that's wrong. It's an alternative method now.
So no more method 21 with Quad OB. But a facility of this size, this is a satellite image, about 5 method 21 technicians. So you're gonna have to do bi-monthly scans. Something like this will need at least 2 OGI techs. And it's an estimated like 115,000 components. So that's good. That's a reduction in force. So Appendix K is doing good things. Just the methods you have to be careful with. If that technician is looking at components and pulls that camera down too fast, is he out of compliance? He could be. If he didn't go for the next 10th second that he needed to be there, you're out of compliance. So you're gonna have to be careful with that. So conducting the survey. So there's basically 3 options that you have to lay out the monitoring survey. The first one is route map or map with observation locations. That's required right now under Quad OA. So if you're doing programs, you should be familiar with this. Typically it's, either a satellite view or, an overlay of the facility, and then using arrows, draw the directions of where the scan path is. And also marking your observation locations. So where do you need to stop and look at equipment? It's pretty simple because almost everything in these facilities has gas on it. The second option is visual cues. So that can be tags, streamers. You can paint the pipe, whatever that may be. And this is a pretty good option for natural gas processing facilities. They likely have an LDAR system in place, so they already have tags there. So that's good, and the technician can use those to follow and scan the components. The third is GPS coordinates. That seems pretty difficult to me. That's a lot of data. So you have to capture the whole survey path when they're doing it and have recorded GPS coordinates of where they went with a date and a timestamp. That could potentially be additional equipment that the technician will have to have on. My recommendation would be the route map all day long. That's what we do now for Quad OA. Within our program that the technicians use, they're able to pull that up when they get to the facility, review it, and see what path they need to take, and it keeps them on track. The tags, if they're already there, why not use it? Maybe use a combination of a couple of these. Just make sure that it's you're taking care of your compliance with it. Any questions on that? And this could be as simple as, wrapping a pipe with, some paint to indicate that this is something that needs to be scanned. Something that I say though, if you're going to go into a new facility and use visual cues, I would identify the stuff that doesn't need to be scanned, because if we're talking natural gas processing, that's most of what's out there. You've got some air, you've got a little bit of oil, the rest is gas. So those components are very small compared to what you need to scan. So if you can identify what doesn't need to be scanned and know that everything else does, that could work as well. So when you're documenting, when you find a leak, right, which we know we will, we always find leaks. The option is, there's 2 options. So the one right now is you've got to capture a short video clip. I recommend a 10-second video. That's what we do now. It's pretty easy. Just you're scanning, you stop, you find a leak. You're going to have to tag it anyway, create a 10-second video and a picture with a leak arrow. And it needs to have time, date, and the location of the leak on it. And this is an example of that right now. So something else that they reference in Appendix K, which is currently being used under the alternative work practice, is full video of the monitoring survey. It can be done. It's a lot of data, but in this day and age, data's cheap. Like data storage is cheap. What we do whenever we do a full recording of this is that we save it in triplicate. So we get external hard drives. All that video footage is saved on the technician's hard drive, one at the facility, and when he gets back to the office, he saves it as well. Because as you can guess, the facility location often loses their hard drive. So you have the data there, you can make them an additional copy and give it back to them. And that's why we store it in triplicate, because things can happen. External hard drives can get broken, they can fail. So if you're gonna do that option, make sure you've got a good storage system and good backups. Because inevitably, an auditor will want to view those and make sure that you're, number one, scanning the components for the allotted amount of time that's required. And two, that you're getting all the components that are required. So that is the benefit of this. You have proof at that point that you have scanned everything and done it in the right amount of time.
So is that an either or there?
It's an either or. It's an either or. But you have to do one or the other, or you can do both. Currently in any of our AWP programs, we're doing both. So the technician is recording the whole time he's scanning, and we break those up. I recommend breaking them up in about 20 minutes or so of footage, because stuff happens, right? A battery can eject, just, you never know what can happen, but you can lose that data. And you don't want to have an hour's worth of data that you just lost, because you have to go back and re-record all of that video. We've had it happen. Cameras are great, but as they get older, springs get weak, batteries will eject, you lose all that data. So I recommend putting a protocol in place. It says no more than about 20 minutes per video if you're recording the entire thing. So they'll record that, and then at the end of their survey, they go back and capture the 10-second videos at the end. It's easy. These facilities aren't that big, and you know where your leaks were. So you go back, you capture this data, and that's what we share with our clients is that 10-second leaking video, so that maintenance personnel can review it and go, okay, I know where the leak is. I know what I need to do to get prepared. I need this gasket, this wrench, whatever that might be. So they're prepared whenever they go out.
So that's an either or for.
Yeah.
maybe for
Yeah.
Appendix K, right?
Yep, you can do that. So if we're doing quad OA scans right now, we do number one. We just scan everything and then capture the leaks with a picture and a video. Pretty simple. We haven't figured out a way for option 2 to upload that into the cloud. It's a lot of data, and that's why we use the external hard drives. You might be able to figure out a better way, but we haven't yet.
That's still a 5-year.
Yeah, 5 years. 5 years. Got to hold on to all this stuff for 5 years. So talk about QA/QC with Appendix K. So in addition to what we just covered, the technician has to do a verification video, which is 5 minutes recorded showing his techniques. So the first 5 minutes of his scan, he's going to have to record that. You have to save it somewhere. It has to be available for 5 years. So you could do that and then move into just turning it off and only recording your videos, or you could just keep recording and do the entire scan, have it recorded. So this is going to show proper dwell times, angles, distances, making sure you've got the proper delta T in the background. And the cameras that are available to us are getting better at helping us find that. Right now, a technician knows if you've got bad delta T, everything gets blurry and it's gray. But they're now highlighting kind of what that difference in the temperature is on the newer models of cameras. So it's a good tool to have. So also with QA/QC, for all your technicians, you're gonna have to do quarterly performance audits. And that can happen in a few ways. You can do comparative monitoring in real time, which means have the technician in front of you and you're falling behind and you're verifying that they're not missing any leaks. There's technology available. You can Bluetooth to an additional screen. You can watch him as he's scanning. But that's boots on the ground with your technician, verifying that they're doing everything appropriately. Second option is you can just do 2 hour, you can go back after they've performed it, and you can just do a 2 hour scan of the same and make sure that the data that you got and his data lines up, meaning all the leaks that you found, he had found previously. Or you can have the technician send in a 2 hour recorded video, which you will sit at a desktop and view.
So the technician can do the 2 hour recording, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it don't have to be on.
So you don't have to be on site, exactly. But you've got the problem, that's a lot of data. Are we talking, shipping thumb drives back to the office? If they're remote or coming into the office and bringing that in, kind of doesn't matter how it gets there, but you're gonna have to have a senior level tech review their work.
You've got 8 technicians, 6, you do that math, you're talking.
Yeah, how much fun is it to sit there and watch OGI videos? It's no fun. I'd recommend going out and do comparative monitoring right there with them. That way, if you see anything that they're doing that's out of protocol, you can go ahead and retrain while
And
you're
you
on
can do
site.
safety audits at the same time.
Yeah,
You can do-
Yeah, it gets the senior level OGI techs out in the field with the technicians and just checking on them. I think it's a good thing. We try to do it quarterly already, but it's a lot. That's why you need to have a lot of senior level techs, because this is going to eat up a lot of their time. Yes, sir.
So if the senior level tech goes out and does OGI monitoring for you, then somebody else has to come behind and do this comparative monitoring for that senior level OGI tech?
I think it reads, everybody who surveys has to be on it.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the question is that if you do the 2 hour recorded submission part and, oh, I found a leak that you missed.
Then you've got to go through retraining, and
I
it's,
violation because I didn't correct that leak because somebody else found it out after the fact.
and that's an unknown that we don't know. But the way it reads, the only language they've given is that if they do fail, it's very prescriptive on the retraining that has to happen. And I didn't go into that much on these slides, just trying to get, again, if anything that you want to take from this, take away that you need to start making senior level OGI techs, getting those hours in.
So
Every OGI technician needs to be a senior, or you can have people that are not
You can
senior
have people
doing
that are
it.
not seniors.
Do the inspections count?
Yes, they
Okay.
do. After they've completed their training, they are a qualified technician. But to get senior level status, I forget the hours, but it's.
1,400.
Yeah.
That one, okay.
Yeah.
Senior level people, though, is training the new techs, right?
Yeah, you have, if you don't have an OGI tech now,
Can't train.
you can't
techs.
create these programs.
So
You
then
have
what,
to have somebody now.
so then you literally have to basically start now to train someone for basically 3/4 of a year
Yeah,
and get them to senior OGI status to even start your program internally.
correct.
Here's a question. A big company in Montrose has been in this business for a long time.
I got a bunch of senior level.
How many?
Oh.
I've got 30 in the States and then another 30 in Canada.
And they're all very well compensated and not poachable.
These are gonna be highly paid people, I guarantee it.
So it's.
They walk around with a band on their arm.
Yeah.
They got patches.
Yeah, so everybody's a free moral alien.
Loaded question here, but, how do you see the pricing for this type of work compared to what we do? By the way, OGI.
Going up. It's going up because of these requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A good senior level tech, you're approaching 6 figures. to
And
have them around.
clients are gonna have to adjust, and that's some of the challenges I think everybody's having. Helping them understand, you know.
This is
the
not your
definition of
traditional.
LDAR, right? And no disrespect to Method 21 LDAR, it has been and still is a very necessary monitoring and reporting protocol, but it's a different.
This is different.
Right? You're dealing with a different breed cat. And-
But it's good because, you know, your weekend warrior's no longer gonna be able to just pick up a camera and go out there and say he scanned your facility.
And the regulators are gonna be able to ask them the question, hey, how many hours do you have?
Yeah.
Are you?
Make sure you're tracking it.
Experienced person or?
I don't know,
You know,
you know, right now, we do it through whenever they set up to do a scan, you know, the data that they're recording, they have their name on there. And our system is calculating how many hours they have out there and time on tools. Yeah, so these guys are gonna be expensive. They're gonna be hard to find. But right now is the only time that you'll be able to create a senior level tech without having a program. So if you're gonna do it,
Start.
do it yesterday. So what's coming? Right now, we thought Appendix K is only gonna be applicable to Quad OB, but we're already seeing it referenced in other regulations. And this is one that we came across, the bulk gasoline terminals, they're doing, you know, they're doing a new they proposed it, June 10th of 22. XXA for gasoline distribution, and it references Appendix K. And the only reason that I know this is that a client saw it and asked me about it. And I said, no, you don't. Appendix K is only for Quad OB. Well, nope, this is the future. It's coming. It's going to be all over the place. It's going to be the standard. So if you're doing internal programs, start making OGI techs. If this is your business, you should have techs and be prepared for it. So we don't know what else is coming, but you know, looks like future regulations will depend on Appendix K, which is good because there's some organization now. Like I said, we go out sometimes and there's been another OGI tech that scanned, and again, they said, yeah, the guy was here like 3 hours and he found 2 leaks, and then we're there 10 hours because we're trained and we know what we're doing, and we find 50 leaks. So with that, questions? Anyone? Yes,
If you're not doing the continuous video,
right?
how do you prove that you're staying on the component for 2 seconds? Just only from the lead video?
No, it's gonna be a numbers game. So what, yeah, you're supposed to be there 2 seconds per component, with 2 angles. And again, I said, I'm kind of calculating about 5 seconds per component. So looking at like, again, like a cryo plant, it's about 10,000 components. It's gonna take you 2 days. So if you do it in 1 day, it's gonna raise a red flag. I believe that is how they're gonna audit it. They're gonna be looking at numbers. So that's a perfect point. So do you want to have a full recording of that where, you know, a technician could get distracted, you know, the camera could go out of focus, anything like that, and that could be putting you out of compliance, potentially. So we don't know. It's going to be interesting to see it roll out and see how the EPA handles it and how they audit it. There were things like the table that's at the bottom that says, oh, you can kind of reduce scan time if you've got X amount of components within a different area. I'm not going to teach my technicians that, because what that's going to be is a buffer for compliance that maybe if they happen to move away too fast, following the 2 second per component rule, we'll be able to rely on that table and say, well, no, actually, they only needed to be there, you know, not 10 seconds, but 5, according to this table. But I'm not going to use that I'm not going to train my technicians to follow that. It's a safety net, is the way I view it. Yes,
Is there a second public comment period for Appendix K that's going on now, or,
it's done.
and is there a best guess of when Appendix K will go final?
Best guess, Q3. So next quarter. is my best guess. We don't know though.
But there was another commentary?
Yes, at the end of last
How they
year.
respond to that, we'll just probably go from the final rule.
Well,
Make any tweaks?
No, I don't think they're gonna go back again for comments. I think this is gonna be it,
Okay.
however it comes out.
So,
Yeah.
But there was some, people had a chance to submit comments.
Yes, and it got better, right? It was 5 seconds per
Right.
component initially. They were not outlining, training was outlined by,
Number of sites
Yep.
versus hours, so they did make some meaningful.
yeah, they listened, but they didn't really listen. What's that?
You don't have to do it.
No, but you have Quad OC coming out.
Yeah.
And the states, what are the states gonna do? They're gonna go to Appendix K. I'm dealing with an issue right now in Texas, where we're trying to get some older permits. They have older Texas permits, and we're trying to have them do OGI. And so we're talking to TCEQ. And what do they reference? Appendix K. Within those facilities also are subject to, I'd have to do AWP, which means I have to record based on the AWP, the entire site. So now I'm, it keeps me up at night because a technician could make a mistake and put somebody out of compliance and you can't hide. It's there, it's recorded.
So isn't AWP recording an entire site a whole lot different than what goes in Appendix K is? I mean,
It's the same thing. You record the entire time you're scanning, you're recording.
I don't think it says that.
You have the option of doing that for
Well, for this,
Appendix K.
but if you're recording, it's the same as AWP. You have to record AWP. Or AWP.
Yeah, but not, you don't have to record the entire time you're standing there. doing
For
it.
AWP?
Not the way it's written out. You can do a whole scan around, you find no leaks, you can turn on and go like this, and you're done, go.
I'll have to look at the language, but our protocol
That's
is,
not how we interpret.
yeah.
It's not how Gary Mark interpreted it 3 years ago here.
That's not how we.
She said you have to record everything.
And that's what's kept people away from the AWP. That's one of the things.
I would love to interpret it your way.
So would I. So would I. And I think that depending on the client, we're gonna offer these options to them. How do you want us to handle your program? I'm gonna try and not record the whole time, because it's just, there's too much room for error. Right? You gotta think about it. You're out there, you're looking at thousands of components a day, and they want you to count how many are in the scene, right? And so then you've got, your technician says, oh, it's 5 components, so I'm here for 10 seconds. But then an auditor comes back and goes, well, no, there's a valve in the background that you were scanning, right? So then you get into that trouble. So, Yes.
When you talk about components, you have to count the valves, the connections, every.
That's the way I'm interpreting it.
component in that
just like,
particular scene.
yep, just like method 21, how you count components. You're setting up your inventory. So a valve would be a valve, 2 connectors, right? So that's, yep,
Where you have
6
a
seconds.
valve with multiple 1/4-inch tubing components. that-
You're there for camp out.
well,
You camp out. In my opinion, it's unnecessary. A trained technician knows if he sees a leak or not. And so now we're making him just stand there and look at a scene when he's already decided half a minute ago that there's no leak and he could be on his way to the next components. But he's gonna have to be there.
They polluted it with the dwell time from.
It's just as much as we commented on it. I saw so many comments from everybody else in the industry saying, we don't want a dwell time per component. So let's do a per scene basis. And they didn't listen. I've had talks with the EPA and they don't listen. I don't know why, but they have it in their head that it needs to be per component, which it doesn't. You can ask any trained OGI tech if he's looking at a per component basis. Craig brought up a good analogy. If I said, whose name in here begins with the letter A, raise your hand. Right? One guy in the back. I didn't have to look at everybody to know that one guy raised his hand.
Right.
It's the same principle. So, no, that's it. Anything else?
Are there any current certifications, OGI, that you get out that would grandfather you in?
Well, that's what I'm saying. you just have to meet those hours.
Yeah, without.
And there's training. Our company provides OGI certification that you need, which is the classroom training. But then there's the training outside of the classroom in the field that's required. FLIR has some good training. I think Craig has some stuff online that you can take. It would be for the refresher, right?
Document your hours.
Yeah.
Even internally, this operator A, this is how many hours they've been out in the field, this is time on tools, just do that.
Yeah, right now is the only time that you're gonna be able to just hand somebody a camera and make a technician. So, yeah, without having a senior tech to make me technicians.
Great. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
If you didn't get a chance to, please try to sign the sign-in sheet. If you can't find it, you can come up here and there's a sign-in sheet up here. Great job.
Oh, yeah, it's much better than last year.
Natural.
I've used it a number of times. I remember seeing.
Every day.